Hi guys, welcome to my channel. I'm Jason White. This is my channel, Jason's Weird Reads. Thank you for tuning in. If you like horror books, dark science fiction, and dark fantasy, please hit the subscribe button and we'll discuss some books. Alright, so this is my favorites and disappointments reads of 2019. I read 53 books and I have, I think, 6 disappointing reads and also my top 10 reads of 2019. I'm going to go through the top favorites first. And in at number 10, I have Penny for Your Thoughts by Robert Ford and Matt Hayward. This book was just funny, and it was a lot of fun to read. I had a lot of fun reading this book, and it kind of came, I was talking in my last video, or, well, one of these videos here, I was talking about SAD and being sort of depressed, and I kind of experienced it all year last year, and I don't know why that is. But this book came to me at a particularly dark time, and I just sort of needed the comedy. And there's some really funny parts in this book. I highly recommend it. I recommend all these books, and I can't help it, but I'm probably going to say I highly recommend it at the end of each book, so please be forewarned. All right, in at number 9, I have Pines by Blake Crouch. I wasn't sure what I was going to think about this book, but I ended up binge reading it in one sitting, 1.5 sittings. I don't know. It was a very short reading period for me, though, because one thing I learned about Blake Crouch is that he has fish hooks in his prose. And by that I mean the lamentation box, I think that's what it's called, from Hellraiser, where the chains come out and they grab the guy. That's exactly what his book is. It grabs you and you just can't pry your eyes away from it. You have to know what's going to happen next. And Pines was certainly no exception. This book is just crazy. Alright, in at number 8, Halloween Fiend by C.V. Hunt. I really enjoyed Halloween Fiend. It's set in a town that's haunted by a creature. Uh, I forget what they call it, but it basically comes to their door at night and on Halloween, and and it tries to lure people out, and it will, if you pay attention to the thing, you're pretty much gone. That's all I'm going to say about it. But it's a really good book. It's very much a Halloween book, and I recommend that you read it for Halloween, because it just hits all the spots. I really enjoyed it. In at number 7 is Lords of Chaos by Robert Jordan. This book was just, it's book number 6. Did I mention that? It's book number 6 in the Wheel of Time series, and it was a lot of fun. There's a battle at the end of this, Dumai Wells, and my god, this battle is just crazy. I really enjoyed reading this book, and the battle really was like at the end was the icing on the cake for me. In at number 6 is Autumn Crow by Cameron Robeek. This is a collection of short stories all set in the town of Autumn Crow, which is a brilliant name for a town, I must say. And you know what? Every story, not too often do I read a collection or an anthology where I like every short story, but this one was really good. And it had one of my favorite short stories of the year in total, and that was Frost. This story really creeped me. It gave me the creeps. There's just something that happens in that story that I really enjoyed. It really bordered on weird fiction, which, if you know my channel at all, that's sort of my bag. It reminded me a little bit of a John Paget short story, and that was really surprising. The rest of the stories, though, are all solid, and I was meant to record a review on it, but I just never got around to it. But this is my endorsement of that book right now. It's fantastic. I recommend it, especially for around Halloween. 2 Halloween books made it to this list. That's pretty cool. Okay, in at number 5 is another Cameron Robeek's Kill River, and I read this for the Bloody Beach read along. And this book is just a lot of fun. It just reminded me of a lot of 80s horror slasher films, and it just felt, there was a lot of 80s references, which I enjoyed. a lot of pop music. I even listened to some of the songs while I was reading the book. The two books that are out are really great, and I sort of including the entire series that's out right now in this at the number 5 spot. But yeah, I'm gonna read the rest of his books this year. I'm pretty sure Kill River 3 is supposed to be coming out in 2020. I'm not too sure about that, but I'm really looking forward to that. So yeah, definitely check that out if you haven't yet. It's a really really fun read, especially if you like 80s style slasher films. In at number 4 is The Institute by Stephen King. Now, this book was another one that I sort of binge read. It took me a couple weeks to read, but it was like the first 2 or 3 chapters or parts or whatever that I kind of slogged through, and then I took it to work with me on one weekend, and it was really slow, and there was like over a third of the book left, or 2/3 of the book left, and it was like, I don't know, 400 pages I just flew through during that weekend, and that was just a fun read. I was blown away by how fun it was. You know, Stephen King, he's been kind of hit or miss lately, I guess. His later books, anyway. That's not a bad thing. He just writes more varied stuff right now. He's definitely more of a diverse author in the sense that he writes in different genres, and sometimes you just don't know what to expect. And it's funny how these Stephen King books of late are winning horror awards when these like Elevation and The Institute both won the Goodreads Best Horror Book of the Year, and they're not horror. The Institute is definitely more of a thriller. I don't even think there was really any. Maybe at the end there was some horror elements, but it's a thriller, you know. But it was still really good. In at number 3, I have The Same Deep Water as You by Chad Lutzke. Chad Lutzke was a new author that I discovered in 2019. In 2018, I heard about him, but I didn't read him until 2019. And this was the first book of his that I read. And I wanted to include all of them in this list, to be honest with you. But I wanted to keep this list limited to only one author gets one spot. I didn't want to do a repeat, and there was a lot of repeat authors that I read in 2019. So I picked my favorite of Chad Lutzke's and put it on the list, and that's The Same Deep Water as You. It's about a bunch of sort of a coming of age story, and it follows a group of kids, basically teenagers who listen to The Cure, and all the chapters have song titles of The Cure as the chapter title, and I really enjoyed that. It was just I can't say it was a fun read. It was kind of a sad read, and the horror is more real life horror, just being alive and experiencing dark things, and that's one thing about Chad Lutzke's work that really blows my mind. How he captures a sense of grief and loss, and yearning for things, for people, for objects, for he just writes about real life like a lot of other authors don't. And kudos to him, man. I'm gonna keep reading him. He's a new favorite because every book of his I've read so far, which are 3, has blown me away. I don't know how he does it, honestly. In at number 2, I have The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. Now, I had planned on finishing this series this year, but I had so many obligations I just couldn't get to it, so I'm going to do it this year. Hopefully, 2020. You're my year. But yeah, The Fifth Season is a really remarkable read. It's very dark and gritty, and it's about it's like a world, a planet that continuously experiences catastrophic events that nearly wipes out humanity. And there's also people who have magic abilities, but even though they are needed in order to keep the earthquakes at bay, basically, they are feared and treated horribly because people don't like other people who can do weird things. It's very, it's very true though. Even if we in this world, if we had people who had magical abilities who could keep the volcanoes from exploding and could clean the oceans with their magic abilities and keep the earth from doing a climate change, we would probably hate them. Not all of us. Some of us would love them, but you know damn well that there are people who would hate them. There's plenty of evidence in this world of that. Okay, so fifth season. I highly recommend it, especially if you want a unique look at a fantasy story. I wouldn't start reading fantasy by reading this book. If you're brand new to fantasy, don't start with the fifth season. It's going to confuse you. But if you're seasoned, definitely check it out. You're going to love it. Maybe. Probably. You should. All right. In at number 1 is another new author I discovered this year. And it's The Rust Maidens by Gwendolyn Keist. I was reading this book, and I just couldn't believe how good it was. The one thing that impressed me most about this book was her description of... it's not Detroit, but it's a Detroit-like town. I think it's in Cleveland. It's the Rust Belt, where basically these little communities within the city relied upon a certain factory staying open to keep them all, with a roof over their heads and food on their table. And so when the word strike came up by the union, fear entered their hearts. And this is a story basically about a mill factory, a steel mill factory that goes on strike, and the fear that it causes, and the consequences. And what happens, of course, there's going to be some weird stuff that goes on. And 5 little girls end up with this weird condition where their bones are turning into rusted metal. And they bleed this weird water type stuff. And I'm going to leave it at that because it is a pretty strange story. And it's just beautifully written. It's a very good commentary on our fucked up way of living. And, I can't recommend it enough. It's just such a fantastic book. It won the Bram Stoker Award, and it totally deserved it. So yeah, that is my list. My top 10 books, 2019. Next is my most disappointing books. I don't really like dwelling on negative things too much. There's a lot of people who've been doing like their least favorite books of 2019. I don't really watch those too much. But I did have some disappointments too. So I'm going to name them now and maybe give you a reason why I didn't like them. So I read Terror Cell by Tim Curran. He used to be like a favorite author of mine because he's a master of creating monsters and creepy scenes. And Terror Cell started out in very much a Tim Curran vein in that respect. But then it just went off the rails. It was almost as though Tim Curran had this great idea to write a pretty creepy Lovecraftian tale, but he didn't know where it was going. He didn't know how to end it, so he just ended it. And didn't put too much thought into the ending in the second half of the book as he did with the first half. You can feel it. It just loses its feel halfway through. And so it was very much a disappointing read for me. But I wouldn't start there with reading Tim Curran. Definitely read something like Dead Sea or Fear Me or The Underdwelling. One of those 3 by Tim Curran, and you'll probably fall in love. Binti by Nnedi Okorafor. This book disappointed me because it's like, I described it in my review of it like it feels like a skeleton or an outline of a story. It doesn't feel like it's complete. There's no descriptions whatsoever. It's like, oh, we went and did this, and then we went and did that, instead of us following the characters, feeling what they feel, smelling what they smell, feeling the textures of things here and there. It it was just the bare bones of a story. There was absolutely nothing to it. You might as well watch TV. I think I'm going to finish the series, though, or at least read the next book, because it's a little bit thicker and maybe there's more detail in it. But I really wanted to go into the tribe that's mentioned in the book a little bit longer, and to experience it a bit instead of just being told what this book or what that tribe was like and everything else that went on it or went on along with it. It was just a little too thin. It's like water when I want coffee. All right. I also was disappointed by I Call Upon Thee by Anya Alborn. Now, this is a book that should have really hit home, but for some reason it didn't. I just didn't like it, and I don't know why. I really wish I could come up with a reason, but I don't know why I didn't like this book. It just didn't gel with me. It should have, because it has all the elements that I would like in a book, but it didn't. I have no other reason for not liking it. Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones. This book, it just didn't make any sense to me, and I read a lot of books that don't make sense. um, it started off being like a father-son story, and it ended off being something completely different. It sort of had the same problem as Terror Cell, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but the beginning started pretty strong, but then it just falls apart. I mean, the book goes into some pretty crazy territory, and I'm not too sure if it needed to go there, because it seems like he had a story in mind, but then he just scrapped it and went for the weird. I don't know. So for me, it's a pretty popular book, though. I'm pretty sure that my opinion on this book is the minority, so you might like it if you check it out. And the last two books are two Wheel of Time books that disappointed me, and they are Winter's Heart, which is book 9, and Crossroads of Twilight, which is book number 10. And these two books are commonly referred to as the Wheel of Time slog because they really drag. And I think there's a reason for this. I don't have any evidence aside from that these two books both take place at the same time during the same events, and so I'm thinking that this might have been meant as one book, and they split it into two. And I think that's why it just doesn't, those two books don't work. It might have worked better if it was one book, and even though it would have been like 2,000 pages long. But that would be why they split it up into two. But it really drags. I mean, like, almost nothing happens in these two books, and it gets really, really fucking boring. You know, the fact that I survived these books, I'm on book 11 now, and things are seeming to pick up again. The plots are moving forward again. And so that makes me excited. I know I'm going to finish the series now. I'm on book 11. I only have 3 or 4 books left, if you count 4, if you count the prelude, or the whatever, the new spring, or whatever it's called. If you include that, then yeah, 4 books. But yeah, I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make it. All right, so that's my top 10. My top 10 favorite reads of 2019, along with my disappointments of 2019. Thank you for watching, everyone. Keep being creative, and I will catch you guys in the new year.